Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, Vice Chair of the Libertarian Party, overall Libertarian activist, software developer, former corporate trainer. I wear many hats. But it's been a while since I made a video where I've done some political commentary, and I just feel like there's a lot to say right now. So I wanted to make a video and say those things. And it's just sort of a reflection of sort of the moment, the political moment, and the issues that are captivating people's imaginations. So right now, everyone's kind of watching the Democratic primary, because that's the big question. Who will be the Democratic nominee? Also, a big question is who will be the Libertarian Party nominee, and it's getting more and more exciting. So if you have not been following the Libertarian Party primary, I highly recommend that you do. You have quite a diverse selection of candidates going right now, state to state, to convention, making their case to be the nominee, to be that third choice, especially for people who are just sick of two-party politics, which is why I'm involved in third-party politics. But one of the issues that seems to really capture people's imaginations in the Democratic Party discussion is this issue of inequality. So you have all these different candidates kind of talking about how they want to address inequality. And, you know, usually you end up talking to people and they have two things, either like inequality is the end-all of all issues, that if you just somehow made the economic gap between the top and the bottom smaller, everything just magically happens to be better. Then there's the opposite, where it's like, there is no gap. I don't know what you're talking about. This is not an issue at all. And, you know, you're going to find that I'm generally a guy who looks to reconcile points of view. And I do feel like both of them sort of overplay what they're trying to say. And from a messaging point of view, that's usually better, because usually a bolder, less nuanced message is a simpler message that cuts across people easier. It's easier to just say, this is bad, this is good, but it's typically not that simple. So is there inequality? Yeah, but what do you mean? You know, you're taking a look at inequality of wealth. And when you say wealth, do you mean like income? Do you mean net worth? Do you mean income or net worth before or after taxes? Do you mean inequality over someone's lifetime? Because people have different wealths over their lifetime. Generally, people are poorer when they're younger, and they're richer when they're older. And there's all sorts of different aspects to how you measure inequality that's going to get you different results and tell you different stories. That makes looking at it from an economic point of view squishy. And then there's the issue of, why does it matter? Is inequality a cause of a problem, or is it the symptom of a problem? Okay, is the reason why things are bad because, you know, there was this sort of that, you know, capitalism as a generic term? Okay, because generally, I mean, to me as a libertarian, when I think capitalism, I'm thinking sort of unfettered free markets. When most people are thinking of just capitalism as just general commerce and the ability to enter commerce with rules, and then sort of like far left thinks of capitalism as this sort of, you know, imbalance of power between those who are at the top of the enterprise structure. So I'm going to use the word capitalism very loosely, because it's like a Rorschach test. It looks different to different people. And people will argue over whether capitalism is good or bad, having a completely different image in their head of what they're talking about. Okay, this is why it's always important to kind of discuss what is it that we're talking about, which is why I find the inequality discussion very weird, because inequality, you know, people say, well, inequality is growing, shrinking. What are you talking about? Same thing with capitalism. What are you talking about? So anyways, yeah, so I mean, some narratives say, hey, you know, capitalism, people just generally entering into enterprise, generally leads to some people doing better, and it just leads to this inequality, and this inequality leads to those people who are doing better to have sort of undue influence in politics, and thus this leads to this sort of corruption of society over time. That's one narrative. You know, another narrative, the narrative that I generally tend to lean towards is that sort of just over time, different parties within a society will seek to balance the tables to, you know, what's what I'm looking for, basically fix the rules of the game for themselves. And it's not just people who are in business, it's people in all walks and realms of society, you know, labor, enterprise, academia. Everybody's trying to rig the game in their favor. Okay. And not everyone, but there are people in every sector of life that do. And what happens is that generally when you do that, whether you're saying, hey, let's put taxes on my competition, regulations on my competition, you're creating costs on people who are your competitors. And this creates sort of a cost to opportunity, which over time creates inequality, because those who are naturally already kind of they'll be able to afford to deal with these new regulations and taxes and get those opportunities and still be able to compete with those people. While those who are less, who would have really liked to start a business or really like to learn a new skill, well, they don't have 6 months because they're poor. They don't have 6 months to go study and get a license. They don't have the ability and the access to capital to start a basic business when there's all these new fixed costs constantly being added via regulations and other costs being taxes. And then again, it's not just the taxes and regulations, but it's the cost of the lawyers, the cost of the accountants that piles on. Okay, so in that case, what happens is the access to opportunity becomes disparate. And then that's where the inequality begins, and then, it leads to sort of the imbalances of political power. That's one narrative. And then there's a mix of all the above. Okay? But again, is it a symptom or a problem? And then again, what's the problem? Because again, what a gap in wealth is not the same thing as a gap of income. A gap in wealth over a lifetime these are totally different stories that tell you totally different problems. But it's an interesting conversation, and this is the sort of the conversation that everyone wants to engage in, and everyone wants to talk about all these different taxes. A wealth tax, just basically taking a look at people's net worth and just taking a piece of it, not appreciating that one, it's an easy tax to avoid. Two, net worth isn't cash. People always say, well, the Walt family, the Walmart people, they have billions of dollars, and I can't believe they can't pay their employees more. There isn't billions of dollars just sitting in cash somewhere. And it's not. There's a difference between the Walton family and Walmart the company. Okay, if you, let's say, own a business, okay, your business has a separate bank account than you, and it's not like your employees have suddenly a claim on your bank account, okay, and your bank account's sort of an extra piggy bank to go pay them. That goes for anything that you're a leader of, okay? There's a separation between the sort of the organization you're in, okay? Let's say you are the leader of a nonprofit. Does that mean your personal assets should be paying for the employees of the nonprofit? So there's there is sort of this dissonance in the discussion. Okay, my overall point here is that we need to sit down and just have a better idea of what we're trying to talk about. And two, that my perspective is that we're focusing on the wrong kind of inequality, okay, in the sense that we're focusing too much on things that are more measurable, such as money, but it doesn't tell you the whole story. To me, I see what I see is an inequality, but an inequality of opportunity. And I hate that phrasing, because oftentimes you hear people talk about, well, I want an equality of opportunity. And it's really just usually it's like a slogan that people will use to kind of dismiss any kind of conversation about policy or identity politics, which again, is everything identity politics? No, and it shouldn't be. But there's no such thing as issues as identity playing a role in the world and everyone's life's outcomes. That is a thing, okay, and it is a thing worth discussing. Is the answer policy? A lot of times it isn't, and I think people are, for most things, rush too quickly to say policy is an issue for whatever thing they don't like. But so that's why the most accurate thing is to say inequality of opportunity, because the issue is that there's all these things, these barriers that make access to opportunity, whether it's getting a new profession, starting a business, easier for some and harder for others. And this does create sort of a two-tier society, because it's not about what your absolute economic position is at the moment, because theoretically, if you have the opportunity, you can change it. If you don't have the opportunity, you can't. And that's generally what happens over our lifetimes. And that opportunity could be because of, it was harder to start a business. But I mean, it also comes at other ends. Maybe we didn't get a good enough education as a kid. We didn't grow enough in an environment. And those are harder issues. It's not just you throw money in a school is just better. Because more money doesn't necessarily mean there's more good teachers. And people who are going to be good teachers aren't always necessarily incentivized by money to go into teaching. Okay, especially when you sit there and say, hey, for a lot of primary education jobs, you have to go get a master's degree. You have to go be 6 figures in debt. Like I sit there and I've worked in private education for most of my adult life. Worked first in finance and now in software development. And, you know, it's just because, hey, I don't have to worry about going back. I get to sit there and teach people. I get to enrich people's lives. I get to help people have more opportunities. But no one's saying, hey, Alex, you have to go get 6 figures in debt before you do it. I can just go out and help people. So it's much easier for me to do that in the private education space. You know, would I like to teach, you know, K through 12 or, you know, help younger people out early on in life? Probably. Okay, I like kids. But, you know, the current system makes it. So again, even though more money doesn't necessarily always mean more resources, more teachers, okay? And having worked in private education isn't always the best paying either. But when you don't make people have to jump through hoops to do something they love, they're more likely to do it. Now I'm kind of meandering in my conversation, but it's a couple more points I'd like to make. Another point is, you're hearing a lot of people talk about the word greed and saying, you know what, the thing about capitalism and competition is that it drives us to, you know, sure, it drives us to try to be better, but at the same time, it tries to drive us to figure out ways to overcome each other and makes us antagonists. Yes, competition can bring out the best and worst in us, okay? In the sense that because of competition, we form teams. When you're in a company, when you are in any kind of enterprise, any kind of project, organization, you are in a team and you're trying to figure, because you're competing against other teams, you're trying to figure out how to work as a team better. So you learn to cooperate better. But of course, you know, that could mean antagonism in the competition. So it can bring out the best and worst in you. But so does love. Okay? How many people have you seen that they love the same person and they get into fights and they get into feuds and they compete? Competition is sort of a natural thing. It's a natural thing that occurs out of scarcity, a natural thing out of not everyone can be the answer to everything. And it's not just a money thing, okay? Competition would exist without exchange, without trade, because you'd still have love and you'd still have people competing over love. And we don't want to sit there and say no one can love each other anymore and you know, people can't try to win the affection of another. And you'll have competition in other realms, you know, whether it's athletic competitions with, again, where these aren't things where necessarily money has to be involved. So if you were to take money out of the equation, these dynamics would still be in society. They'd just be different, but then you'd also eliminate all the productive incentives that sort of free exchange or that more broader exchange allows. Okay, so I want to focus less on that word capitalism, which means different things to different people, and focus on the word exchange, which is very clear. People exchanging goods and services with each other voluntarily, which, you know, creates a division of labor, creates incentives to innovate, creates reasons to try to figure out how to use more resources to do more things, or less resources to do more things, to create an efficiency, especially when the population is constantly growing and our challenges are constantly changing. That efficiency pays off in the long run. People will go, well, no, efficiency is not good because then companies are trying to look to cut costs and they cut labor. But they're also looking at how to use the actual natural resources better, which is better for the environment. It's better for society as a whole, because in the long run, again, resources are scarce, and the better we use the resources we have, the more people that can exist. We have more people on this planet than ever before, and less as a proportion of them are poor as they used before, okay? And the poorest in some countries live like the kings of some of the greatest nations 100 years ago. So, you know, it's all a matter of perspective. It's a matter of what your frame of reference is, and it's a matter of what the world you want to live in. But to me, the most important thing we can do to constantly improve the world is look at our own individual examples, the examples we set towards others, being tolerant towards others, knowing that people make mistakes and they learn through life, you know, being forgiving, okay, for the same reasons. So that way people can have second, third, fourth, fifth chances. There's nothing wrong with giving people more chances, okay? Doesn't mean you're always going to sit there and, you know, sometimes you give a chance when you shouldn't, and sometimes you don't give a chance when you should. But the thing is that we, you know, to err on that sort of side of benefit, to sit there and give people more chances to succeed instead of less chances to succeed, okay? And it's not always going to work out perfectly, but that's not the point. You're going to give people more chances, which means they have more chances for things to work out well. Also, thinking of what are the way we structure our interactions with each other tell us. When we take a look at our justice system, okay, when we sit there and we make everything a crime, you're telling people that you expect them to commit crimes. You expect them to, hey, I expect you to do this. That's why I'm making a rule. That's why I'm making such a harsh punishment. And this kind of creates this, cultural meme that can make things worse. Okay. When you put people in jail, okay, and you incarcerate them and you put them in a small little box, a little cage, you're essentially telling them that I don't trust you enough. And then you sit there and you say, it's kind of like, people tend to, like if you met the class clown when you were a kid, usually the class clown was a kid who made maybe one or two jokes. He never thought of himself as the funny guy, but then everyone else started calling him the clown. So then he started feeling pressure to live up to that image that other people saw of him. That works in all elements, not just being the class clown, whether you are the class jock, whether you are the bad boy. Once society kind of pigeonholes you, whether you consciously think about it or not, you feel like this pressure to live up to what society is pushing on you. And sometimes our justice system can force people to become the worst of themselves because it communicates this expectation that people are going to be the worst of themselves. So we need to all be working to expect the best from each other, not because but be forgiving and tolerant of each other's mistakes along the way. So that way we can maximize what we get from each other and also just have richer relationships, richer life, and richer love. Okay, all the politics aside, we can make our lives have more opportunities. We can make our lives richer just by our own actions of how we treat each other. And with that small act, okay, you spit on those who want to control your life, who want to denigrate your life. It's an act of compassion. It's an act of resistance on those who want the world to be run by the opposite, who want the world to be run through punishment and despair. So do that. Be that. And hopefully this probably won't change how you vote in 2020, but hopefully it changes how you think. And if it changes how you think, the world's changed a little bit. So my name's Alex Merced. I'm a guy who said some stuff. It really doesn't matter. Have a great day.